Hi, this is my review of Out of the Pit. Out of the Pit is a bestiary for the Advanced Fighting Fantasy 2nd Edition role-playing game. This contains more than 200 monsters, and it contains 250 illustrations. So each monster and each monster category is going to have its own illustration. And if you are like me, that you love to show your players the illustrations of the monsters they are fighting or interacting with, you're going to love this. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is pretty good. The document is fully bookmarked. You have these awesome black and white old school illustrations, and everything is well organized and written. I really like the organization. It's really easy to get to the monster that you are looking for. And the graphic style or graphic layout follows that same minimalistic old school design to it. Now let's talk about the contents. First, you have an introduction to what this bestiary is. You have a section called The Land of Danger, and it talks about how you can use these monsters in the campaign setting of Titan. So these monsters can be used anywhere that you like. You have some suggestions as to how to use them in Alancia, or perhaps you want to use them in the land of Kahabad. There are 3 main continents in Titan, so these monsters fit quite easily into all of those places. Maybe you will find some more monsters more suited for the frozen peaks of Icefinger Mountains. Or maybe you need some monsters more suited for the southlands of the burning expanses of the Desert of Skulls. So you really have a lot of options when it comes to a type of environment where you can use these monsters. But I think it's also quite interesting to use some monsters that are out of place, out of their environment. So you could say, what are these types of creatures doing here on this side of the Western Ocean and such. You have a really nice looking map of Alancia, quite detailed. Next week I'm going to be reviewing the Titan campaign setting book, so I hope you will watch that if you want more information and details of the campaign setting of Advanced Fighting Fantasy 2nd Edition. When it comes to the structure and organization of these creatures, you have the information on skills and the skill of each creature's stamina, number of attacks, habitat, number of creatures encountered, type of creature, their reactions, their intelligence, and special abilities. You have all of the information to roleplay as this creature. As a game director, you really appreciate good organization, and because each monster has its own background story and information, these creatures are quite useful as well to generate ideas for adventures. Now I'm going to talk about some of the monsters, and I'll go into detail into a few of them so that you get a better idea of what this bestiary will give you as a game director. First, we have the Aakor. Aakor were perhaps once ordinary wolves before they gained their wings and their penchant for warm blood. It is more likely, though, that they are the remnants of some sorcerer's experiment by a forgotten wizard centuries ago. They are strange creatures, smaller than wolves, but physically very similar, except for a large pair of feathery wings sprouting from their shoulders. Something to consider that is also quite cool when it comes to the beasts and creatures that you can find in Titan is that many of them feel like they were spawned or they were the result of a magical clash. Some of them also feel natural to the setting, and some others feel like they come from the outside, from some other planes of existence. So you have a really good variety. And then you have other creatures such as the Banshee, a classic monster, but take a look at this illustration. It looks really nasty and creepy. Banshees are hideous undead creatures, often heard but rarely met in the desolate, forsaken wastelands in which they dwell. They are chiefly known for their soul-shredding wails that they constantly howl, both day and night, as they wander the wastes. And then you have other creatures such as the Vorket, This is actually a somewhat harmless creature. Vorkets are vegetarian herbivores, living on roots, berries, and flowers, and they are peaceful, nervous creatures as a result. Because of this, and the fact that their flesh is apparently quite succulent and tender, they have long suffered the ravages of predators like lions and jackals. Now, because of this, the Vorket type of creature is quite agile because it needs to escape from predators, but I think it will be quite useful to use them. Perhaps they are controlled by some sort of spell or magical plague and they become hostile because they do have some combat potential, so that will be quite interesting. Then we have some other things, for example, the Birdman. Tribes of birdmen are found in mountainous areas across the whole of Alancia and Kahabad, perched in villages and caves in the highest peaks. They are short and sinewy, with specially powerful chest muscles which support a wide pair of feathered wings. You also have some other creatures like the black lion or wild boars. Oh, this one looks really bizarre, like an aberration. It's the blood beast. This monstrosity is large, at least 4 meters long, and so bloated it can never leave the pool of foul slime that has supported its bulk since it was spawned. Its hide is tough and leathery, protected by thin spines and colored a disgusting gray-green. Its head appears to consist of a red eyes above a vacant, toothy maw. I think that this monster will be quite useful to protect a certain site or treasure trove that the adventurers need to get to. You have other monsters such as, for example, the Brain Slayer, the Bristle Beast. As you can see, some of these monsters are somewhat classical in terms of fantasy role-playing games. But by the end of this review, I will tell you some details that I noticed of even these classical monsters. Then you have the Ka'arth. Beyond the southern limits of human civilization lie endless desert wastes. Here and there are scattered tribes of squat ape men and brutish Neanderthals. But ruling over this inhospitable domain are the Ka'arth, the serpent warriors. Legend says that they are descended from the same lineage as men and Ors. But where man came from apes and Ors were crossed with swine, the Ka'arth are the result of a sorcerer's experiment with snakes. You also have some other bizarre creatures like the Calacorm. Look at it, it has 2 heads. And then you have some other things, some a bit more classical like centaurs or cavemen. You also have giant vermin such as the giant centipede. And then you have changelings. Malevolent, chaotic spirits can be found lurking in many dangerous parts of the underworld, waiting to trap any prey that might stumble into their domain. One of the most bizarre of all these beings is the changeling, which can turn its form into that of another more powerful being at will. Its natural form is that of a tiny human baby, ideal for enticing its prey nearer until it can strike. You also have some really bizarre creatures, but in the sense that they are there to present some challenges, even though they seem quite gonzo and remind you of the beginnings of role-playing games, they are quite useful nonetheless. So for example, we have the chest trap beast. This is basically a monster that hides inside treasure chests. So this is somewhat like the Mimic, but more unexpected. Those that think that the treasure chests are going to attack them, like the Mimic or some other construct of sorts, they're going to be surprised by these creatures that are very bizarre. They are basically living on the hoards that they take or steal from the adventurers they attack or that they even kill. Then you have some other things like the Claw Beast. Some species have evolved in isolation in the wild into savage carnivorous killing machines. Lions and sharks are prime examples. Less common are the Gretsch of the southern deserts and the claw beasts of the north. Taller than a man by almost a head, they are brutish killers covered in long, shaggy clumps of thick hair, which gives them a mottled coloring somewhere between green, gray, and brown. They have 4 arms instead of 2, and each ends in a vicious curving hook, which they use like scythes when attacking. You have some other things like, well, this is a classical monster, the cockatrice. You also have giant crabs. And then you have the crypt stalker. There is a custom in many lands decreeing that upon the death of a nobleman or high priest, his riches are entombed with him, so his power and wealth may follow him to the afterlife. However, there is also a custom in many lands that from the moment the tomb is sealed, all the local thieves and adventurers will form a queue to break in and steal the treasure. Hence, many tombs have been given their own unsleeping guardians, undead beings ready to surprise any potential burglar, and those are the crypt stalkers. You also have crystal warriors and cyclops. You also have the death spider, which is some demons pass the time by roasting the souls of the damned over steaming pits of brimstone and sulfur. Others enjoy trying to tempt holy men as they fast in the wilderness, with the delights of being evil just once. And some stalk the earth as death spiders, luring adventurers to hell as a spider lures a fly. And then you have death wraiths. When a truly evil man dies, his body will pass away and crumble into dust in his crypt, but his evil will remain to haunt the area, manifesting itself as a ghostly white spirit that will prey on the living. A death wraith will only ever be found close to the coffin containing its physical remains, for the link between the two stays strong. Very nasty creature overall, and quite powerful for the type of undead that it is, in my opinion. Quite high in the level of skill and stamina. And then we have the Decayer. Decayers are strange moldering skeletons, often created as guards by evil necromancers. They appear just like animated human skeletons wrapped up in rotten clothes. Their bones are a sickly yellow, as are their vacant eyes. The air around the Decayer hangs heavy with disease and decay. Pretty nasty. Better have those ranged attacks and rage spells at the ready. And then we have other things like demon bats, earth demons, demonic servants, demon spawn. We have the Doragar. In the fetid darkness, deep underground, evil creatures mine ore and beat metal on anvils, ever preparing for war. Orcs, ogres, and trolls hunt their weapons, repair their chainmail and shields, and ready the Doragar with battle songs and strong liquor. Doragar are the shock troops of the forces of chaos, berserk warriors which lead the howling rabble into battle. You have other things like the Drakon, and you have different types of dragons. You have black dragons, gold dragons, red dragons, green dragons, etc. You have the Dripper plant. The Dripper plant, or Death Dripper, as forest lore sometimes has it, is a very strange carnivorous shrub which ensnares its food and with deadly poison. Standing about 3 meters tall, the plant has a wide, thick-barked trunk, which only branches into palm-like fronds at the top. You have other things, different types of elementals, air elementals, water elementals. You also have information on elves and distinction between a few subtypes of elves, like the black elves and the dark elves. Here they are 2 different sub-races. And then you have the Ice Stinger. In apparent defiance of all natural laws, the Ice Stinger floats up to a meter above the ground. It is large, spherical, and covered with long poisonous spines. In the center of its dark green, scaly skin, there is a huge staring eye. Anyone encountering an Ice Stinger must successfully test for luck or be entranced by the eye, and stand slackly as the thing approaches to impale them on its spines. And then you have the Elven. Many people know Elvins only as strange, twinkling lights that can sometimes be seen dancing among the trees at night, or as snatches of chattering and laughter that will drift down on the wind. Few people ever meet the Elvins of the Shamunanti Hills face to face. Some are totally unaware that they even exist. They are secretive little beings related to elves and woodlings. We have other things like the fiends, fire demons. You have fishmen. You have flayers. You have some pretty nasty insects like the flesh grubs, giant flies. You have flying fish. You have the Gark. In the huge bats of dungeon-like laboratories deep below the surface of the earth, evil sorcerers have long experimented with crossbreeding the various inhuman races, orcs, goblins, ogres, trolls, and giants. Combining orc and troll, they have produced the warlike Doragar. Mixing goblin and giants, they have created the Gark. They look very much like a huge goblin, well over 2.5 meters tall. They are lithe, muscular, and very aggressive. Their brown hides are tough and leathery, and they can prove to be formidable warriors with axes and cleavers. And take a look at this illustration of a ghoul. It's so grotesque, so wonderful in its horrifying visage of sort of face. Look at it, it's kind of like something ate its face. Maybe it got too hungry and it ate parts of his own skin, who knows. And then you have giants, different types of giants, frost giants, cave giants. And then you have gnomes, goblins. And then you have the Harun. In the remote jungles of the east, apes have evolved and adapted to their environment in many ways. In the tree canopy, many meters above the ground, the six-armed Krell swing on the hanging vines and lianas with incredible dexterity. Similarly, where the jungle meets the mountains, the Harun have arisen and evolved to suit their environment. You have some other monsters like Hellhound, a classic in fantasy. You also have hobgoblins. You have ice demons. You have the Krell. You have life stealers. And this one is really cool, really scary in a way. It's the living corpse. In the violent lands of Kahabad and Alancia, it is not uncommon to stumble across the scene of a battle with fresh corpses left sprawled on the ground where they died. But when some of the bodies begin to rise to their feet, a clever man will realize that no ordinary battle took place there, as the living corpses ready themselves to attack their next victim. You have giant lizards and lizard kings, lizard men as well. You also have the marsh wraith. In the dark fitted creeks and backwaters of slow-moving rivers and marshland, danger sometimes lurks, ready to catch adventurers unawares. Man is not lord over every domain. In some areas, older, darker beings hold sway. Marsh wraiths are strange primal creatures related to earth elementals and dwell in the still waters among the head-high reeds. They spend much of their time wallowing in the mud, lazily sifting insects into their mouths. They are very territorial creatures and will tenaciously defend their patches against any intruders who would disturb them. Again, I think this is a very useful monster if you want to protect treasure or special sites that the adventurers want to get into those sites or recover particular items. And then you have the Messenger of Death. When one is in need of an assassin, there are many highly trained men available for hire. But when one has a particularly skilled or stubborn enemy to eliminate, only a Messenger of Death will do. These fell creatures can be summoned from one of the demonic planes by a secret ritual to kill powerful opponents, taking as payment the life force of their victims. This Messenger of Death, I think it fits quite nicely with the Adventurer's Companion, that is, with the magical styles presented there. You could have some interesting adventures related to the Messenger of Death. Maybe you need to protect someone from the Messenger of Death, or maybe you need to carry out an assassination. And then you have some other things like the Mist Vampire, Mirror Demon, the Mochalithic, the Nandi Bear. You also have the Night Stalker. You have Orcs, of course. And you have Phantoms. You also have Pit Fiends. Whether it is the descendant of a long-dead dinosaur or a giant lizard that has learned to walk upright, the Pit Fiend is a frightening creature, standing close on 10 meters high on two enormous clawed legs. It is covered in a tough, leathery hide, mottled with blotches of green and brown. Its head is large, with powerful jaws designed solely for snapping bones and rending flesh, for the beast is utterly carnivorous. You have pixies. You have pygmies. There are also different types. There are poltergeists. You have ratmen. You have the red eye. Red eyes are thin, spindly humanoids, distantly related to elves and humans. They live in small numbers in many border towns and villages across the semi-civilized world. They are arrogant beings who delight in harassing and playing tricks on their neighbors as excuses for starting a fight. Anyone caught up in such antisocial behavior must be on his guard, for red eyes have a deadly natural weapon. And then you have sand devils, sentinels, serpent queens, sharks, giant slugs, snapperfish, and you have the Spider-Man. The strange creatures known as Spider-Men are the result of a particularly cruel joke played by a demon prince upon a coven of its acolytes. They had asked their master to change them into death spiders so that they might ensnare more souls for it. On a sadistic whim, it decided to show these puny humans what a curse a spider's body could be. You also have the Spit Toad and the Spirit Stalker. You have the Tarator. You have Tree Men. You have vampires, of course. Classic. You have were creatures. You have wheelies. These are really bizarre. There are many bizarre, impossible creatures scattered across the wildlands of Alancia, but wheelies are possibly the oddest of them all. These weird creatures are disc-shaped with large faces in the center of one side. From around the edge of their circular bodies sprout 4 hands, enabling them to move by cartwheeling along. That would be quite creepy, and I think it would serve nicely for a type of Alice in Wonderland type of adventure, because they are really bizarre and wondrous in a certain disturbing way. And of course you have whites, you have wolves, you have wraith apes, you have worms, and you have rappers. There's also there are yetis and zombies. Near the end of the book, you have treasure tables to determine what the adventurers are going to find in the lairs of these creatures, or maybe the creatures are carrying these objects of value around with them. You also have some information and advice on how to insert your own magical items and treasures into the lairs and belongings of the different monsters. And you have some pretty good encounter tables. They are divided by the type of sites and environments where you can find different creatures. For example, maybe you are exploring dungeons or ruins, so you could run into mummies or dark elves or giant rats. If you go into a forest, maybe you will find pixies or bears. If you go into the plains, maybe you will find mantis men or rhino men. You have a lot of information about the rhino men in this bestiary. Well, at least I think it's a good amount of information if you want to play as a rhino man type of character. Remember that in the core rulebook they give you an example of how to play as a rhino man. And then you have a table for caves where you can find, for example, troglodytes or hobgoblins. You have a forest table where you could find werebears or sprites. If you go into the hills, maybe you will find black dragons or goblins. In the desert, you could find giant scorpions or gold dragons. In the mountains, you could find rock demons or dwarves. In the jungle, you could find were-tigers or perhaps black lions. In the ice table, you could run into snow wolves or silver dragons. In marshes, you could run into spit toads or mud claws. In the desert, maybe basilisks or fiends. In the rivers, giant toads or maybe fishmen. If you go into the seashore, maybe you could find mermaids or giant snakes. Now, let me tell you what I think of Out of the Pit. This is an awesome bestiary. You have a lot of information to the point that each monster feels like an adventure seed. And some of the more powerful monsters, perhaps dragons and vampires, could serve as, for an entire campaign, like recurring villains. There are some other monsters that could potentially be friendly and or neutral, so that you could just insert them every now and then to have some more interesting encounters where you don't know if it's going to turn out into a battle or a negotiation of sorts, or maybe they could even work as allies in some way for the player characters. And as you can see, there were some pretty bizarre creatures that feel like the result of those cataclysmic clashes between deities and battles between wizards. But some other creatures feel natural, feel like they fit inside the Titan setting, that they are natives. But some others feel like they came from other planes of existence. There are also a lot of awesome undead. And something that I really like of the beasts and creatures is that even the classic ones that you probably think that you are familiar with them already have some twists and variations to them. Some that are a bit subtle, some others are a bit more noticeable. So for example, maybe a lot of you that are veterans or grognards think that you already know everything about giant spiders. But maybe you have never played Advanced Fighting Fantasy before, and if a giant spider were to attack you, you could think, oh, maybe it's just going to attack me once and there's a chance of poisoning me. But the Advanced Fighting Fantasy 2nd Edition's giant spider attacks twice per round and has a very nasty web attack or way to catch you in its web, and it could deal further damage. And even skeletons, the classic undead monster. Here you have two variations, and one is considerably more powerful than the other. You have normal skeletons and skeleton warriors. So I think it could be vital for you to, within the game, to research the ruins or tombs that you're going to be exploring, because maybe those places house the remains of some powerful warriors from ancient times. And you could be facing a lot of skeleton warriors, and you could be thinking, oh, they're just normal skeletons, and they are not. So I recommend that you get Out of the Pit, especially if you're looking for adventure ideas, because of the level of detail of each monster. And they're very well designed, both in stats, and their illustrations are awesome. I love the illustrations. So definitely get Out of the Pit. And remember, next week I'm going to be reviewing the Titan campaign setting book. So that book could give you further ideas on how to insert those monsters there, and it will give you a lot of the flavor of the mystery and the secrets of the campaign setting for Advanced Fighting Fantasy 2nd Edition. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.